Good morning, only it isn't a very good morning. It's Sunday at dawn and Storm Darragh is still raging away. The skies are full of threatening cloud and I'm very close to Worcester College Gardens, through which the wind whistles into Beaumont Street, Nelson Street in Jericho, and other streets pointing west-east. And it seems an ideal location to read one of Lewis Carroll's works. I've done excerpts from Alice in Wonderland, where I've read them along the Thames on lovely, warm, sunny afternoons. The Hunting of the Snark, I think, demands something quite different, and I'm going to take advantage of the wind here, coming, as I say, at high speed through Worcester College Gardens and concentrated by the narrow streets, to read The Hunting of the Snark. I'll explain later, but for the moment I just want to get going with the first fit, as it's called. The book that I'm reading from is the annotated Snark, and like the annotated Alice, it's by Martin Gardner, the maths popularizer and Scientific American writer. The drawings are originals and they're not by Tenniel, who did the Alice books. They're much more unsettling, or at least I think so. I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful reading this than I was with the Alice books, because the Snark is less well understood. So Gardner has inserted much more annotation, and I'm going to have to keep jumping over pages. But let's see how this goes. That's the sky in the distance. Fit the first, the landing. Just the place for a Snark, the bellman cried as he landed his crew with care, supporting each man on the top of the tide by a finger entwined in his hair. Just the place for a Snark, I have said it twice, that alone should encourage the crew. Just the place for a Snark, I have said it thrice, what I tell you 3 times is true. The crew was complete. It included a boots, a maker of bonnets and hoods, a barrister brought to arrange their disputes, and a broker to value their goods. A billiard marker, whose skill was immense, might perhaps have won more than his share, but a banker engaged at enormous expense had the whole of their cash in his care. There was also a beaver that paced on the deck, or would sit making lace in the bow, and had often, the bellman said, saved them from wreck, though none of the sailors knew how. There was one who was famed for the number of things he forgot when he entered the ship: his umbrella, his watch, all his jewels and rings, and the clothes he had bought for the trip. He had 42 boxes, all carefully packed, with his name painted clearly on each. But since he omitted to mention the fact, they were all left behind on the beach. The loss of his clothes hardly mattered, because he had 7 coats on when he came, with 3 pair of boots. But the worst of it was he had wholly forgotten his name. He would answer to high or any loud cry, such as "Fry me" or "Fritter my wig," to "What you may call 'em," or "What was his name?" but especially "Thingamajig." While for those who preferred a more forcible word, he had different names from these. His intimate friends called him Candle Ends, and his enemies Toasted Cheese. His form is ungainly, his intellect small, so the bellman would often remark, but his courage is perfect, and that, after all, is the thing that one needs with the Snark. He would joke with hyenas, returning their stare with an impudent wag of the head, and he once went a walk paw in paw with a bear, just to keep up its spirits, he said. He came as a baker, but owned when too late, and it drove the poor bellman half mad. He could only bake bride cake, for which, I may state, no materials were to be had. The last of the crew needs especial remark. Though he looked an incredible dunce, he had just one idea, but that one being Snark. The good bellman engaged him at once. He came as a butcher, but gravely declared, when the ship had been sailing a week, he could only kill beavers. The bellman looked scared, and was almost too frightened to speak. But at length he explained, in a tremulous tone, there was only one beaver on board, and that was a tame one he had of his own, whose death would be deeply deplored. The beaver, who happened to hear the remark, protested with tears in its eyes that not even the rapture of hunting the Snark could atone for that dismal surprise. It strongly advised that the butcher should be conveyed in a separate ship, but the bellman declared that would never agree with the plans he had made for the trip. Navigation was always a difficult art, though with only one ship and one bell, and he feared he must really decline for his part, undertaking another as well. The beaver's best course was, no doubt, to procure a second-hand dagger-proof coat. So the baker advised it, and next to ensure its life in some office of note. This the banker suggested, and offered for hire, on moderate terms, or for sale, 2 excellent policies, one against fire and one against damage from hail. Yet still, ever after that sorrowful day, whenever the butcher was by, the beaver kept looking the opposite way and appeared unaccountably shy. And there is the beaver looking the opposite way. So that is Fit 1 of The Hunting of the Snark. I think the word snark has given rise to the adjective snarky, which is a sort of rather bitter sarcasm. Wouldn't be surprised. It sounds appropriate. But in general, I think the Hunting of the Snark is much less well known than the Alice books, and this seemed an ideal morning to give it a bit of exposure, and I'll return to it with Fit 2 later. And this is where I was reading. It's the bottom of Nelson Street at an exit gate to Worcester College Gardens. If you saw my Worcester College video that I did during Oxford Open Doors, I had free access to Worcester College Garden then, and I was able to get in, have a very good look around, and actually get to these gates from the inside, but I can't do that today. So that's the hunting of the Snark, and I'll see you next time.